Welcome back to the Future of Work track. To bring us home for our last breakout session is Josh Lowy, who will be speaking about bringing open practices to his company. Josh is the co-founder and CEO of Hugo, a tech platform to save and share meeting insights in real time. So please join me in welcoming Josh Lowy.
Cool. Hey everyone. Welcome to building a culture of success on open principles. Most of what I'm going to talk about today is actually based on what my co-founder and I have experienced in growing our company, Hugo. So Hugo is a meeting note platform that's designed for teams. It's one place for everyone to centralize agendas and notes for their meetings and then share them in real time. So this means that our customers can keep everyone on the same page without them having to be in the same room. And that's really what we focus on. So everyone in this room cares about improving the way our teams work together. That's what this session's all about. I want to propose a different way to think about open and making your company more open, because at Hugo, we definitely view this more as a necessity than an opportunity. So if there's one takeaway from the session, it's to think of your team like an octopus. I know that sounds weird, but let me get to the point. So octopuses are actually one of the most underrated animals on the planet. They've evolved to the point where there's a certain level of independent decision-making that is given to each of the tentacles. So actions that are being taken by each tentacle can actually appear to be entirely independent of the rest of the body. But when cooperation is needed, only the central brain can provide that high-level guidance. And that's really shaping the way we should think about this session. The reason that this is the case is the sheer amount of information that's being generated by all of the tentacles is too overwhelming for a system based on centralization to work effectively. And I think this perfectly visualizes what we're all experiencing. The fact that companies still operate this way puts a strain on teamwork. It's not effective in our modern world, and it's certainly not what a lot of young workers want who are making up more and more of our companies today. So the octopus adapted to its surroundings, and it pushed a certain level of decision-making down the stack. Teams are the tentacles of all of our organizations, and empowering people with more agency allows us to work better together. When information can go across the organization, instead of having to go all the way up and down the chain again, we can respond to new information faster, we can solve problems for our customers in new and innovative ways, and we can make sure that the smartest people in our companies want to stick around. And this is how we view the future of teamwork at Hugo. It's something that almost makes your company kind of self-healing, and we think that's really cool, and hopefully it's exciting for you too. However, we definitely tripped over ourselves a ton of times before we figured this out. It's easy to say, yeah, I want my team to move faster with less resources. Who doesn't want that? But what actually needs to happen to ensure that people can move in the same direction when you're trying to do this? So to share how we learned to operate this way, I want to bring you back to Hugo 1.0. Our product was originally designed to focus on meeting preparation, not meeting notes specifically. And we had a lot of problems getting this product off the ground. It was a professional tool, but we were selling it to individuals. So people were confused, who should pay, me or my company? It was hard to grow because when we did get customers, we couldn't really leverage into the rest of the organization to grow that customer base. And we were starting to learn that the way we had implemented it, it was more of a vitamin than a painkiller. However, at the same time, we had a lot of internal friction. We couldn't agree as a team on a shared set of challenges and what to do about them. And this was putting a pretty big cognitive tax on my co-founder and I, because we had these internal headwinds that was stopping us from solving our external problems. So we came to the view that until our whole team could appreciate what we were hearing in the room with our customers, we had no chance of changing this direction or saving ourselves. So we decided to make a change to the product to actually solve some problems for ourselves. And we wanted to bring everyone into the room with our customers without them having to leave the office. That was the goal. So we made two changes to our product. The first one was the notes that we were saving would post automatically just to the general Slack channel. That was it. There was no configuration, nothing. It was super simple. And now, everyone in our team was tapped directly into the fire hose of feedback. And what was so powerful was that it was happening in real time, right after a meeting. So there was no end of day or end of week briefing where my co-founder and I would package up intel that we had heard from our customers, share it in a curated manner, and try and bring everyone along to agree to some conclusion that we'd actually formed before the meeting even started. It was literally just raw, unfiltered access to our customer demands. The second hack that we made to our product was being able to create Trello cards from our meeting notes. So at the time, we relied heavily on Trello to manage our product development and prioritization of bugs. But we wanted to bring some objectivity to this planning process. And now, every single feature request or bug was actually tied to a customer account and linked to the notes that generated those demands. So we had attribution between these loose customer conversations that were happening every day and every week, and more structured project management tools that actually guided how we prioritized what to build and what to fix next. The change that took place was pretty rapid. That was the first thing that was really interesting to us, but it was also eye-opening for a pretty important reason. Not only were people in our team starting to become way more aligned, which was the initial goal we were trying to solve for, but everyone started to have much better ideas than my co-founder and I on how to prioritize things and what to do to close the gaps for our customers in ways that we hadn't thought of. And we realized that there was an assumption we made that was completely wrong. Information overload even existed in small teams like ours at the time. So the old ways of making decisions weren't compatible with the new ways in which we work together. And it didn't matter if you're a team of 10, 50, or 1,500. Funnily enough, we weren't the only ones with this problem, and those hacks that we made that I shared with you, we ended up productizing and turning into a solution that changed the direction of our company, and now we help our customers solve those problems too. But why, we were wondering, as soon as we started to work differently, did the people we were talking to point to this and share war stories that were much worse than ours? We really wanted to understand what was going on there. Well, the first is remote is the new normal. And I say new normal because we still talk about remote, or you read about remote teams as something that's an up-and-coming trend or restricted just to the tech industry, but it's way more pervasive than that. Today, 74% of millennial managers and 58% of baby boomer managers have members of their team that spend the majority of their time remote. So people fragmentation is something that everyone deals with. The second is our data is fragmented across more tools than ever before. Companies manage, on average, more than 120 different tools within the organization, and from what we hear from our customers, over 90% of these tools are department-specific. So although this massive wave that we've experienced in a positive way has helped each of us in our individual roles and responsibilities have these awesome tools to become more efficient and more powerful, it's actually further entrenched information silos and, to a certain degree, kept everyone else in the business more in the dark. And so these factors, people fragmentation and data fragmentation, mean that it's impossible to keep everyone in the company aligned, especially in a world where information can't travel up and down effectively anymore. So we're saying that Open solves this problem because it enables decentralized teamwork. But what does Open really mean? For us, Open was a requirement in order to achieve these three goals. The best idea wins. We don't have to be in the same place. And we don't compromise on speed. The best idea wins, I think everyone would agree, is a fairly uncontroversial goal. But achieving it when you throw the other criteria into the mix, that's what introduces the complexity. So we developed 3 core principles to codify Open at Hugo. And this is what gives us Octopus-like autonomy across the business. The first is equal communication, or what we call tools that talk. So there's a lot of rhetoric out on the web about equal communication between people, but we don't see a lot of information out there about equal communication between tools. And we elevate tools up to that same level because we see it as being just as important. The way that we implement this at Hugo is pretty simple. We don't use tools unless they can all communicate as a single stack. So a couple examples of those. Something that I've already touched on, we can create Jira tickets and Trello cards from our meeting notes so that people in the field who are talking to customers can actually link those conversations to tickets and bugs that are being prioritized. But something else that we've done, which has been pretty effective and made a positive impact on our customers, is we've taken a few different tools, the logging software that our engineering team uses to track issues that are happening that users aren't reporting, Zapier, which is a tool that allows us to connect APIs, and the email communication tools that are used by our marketing team. We've actually stitched all of that together so that when our logging software detects that a user has experienced a bug, we will automatically send that customer an email saying, hey, we're aware you've experienced a problem, we're on it, and we'll get back to you when we've got an update or we've got a solution. And what we found is by getting on the front foot, the customer has an unbelievable experience that beforehand was pretty bad. They haven't even had to report it yet. And funnily enough, the response rates to those emails are way higher than the marketing comms that we send, and they often lead to much richer conversations and customers that actually become advocates even though it started with a negative experience. So that's an example of where tools that talk has really helped us. The second principle is shared consciousness. This one took us a while to realize, but you can think of it as being able to finish each other's sentences, essentially. So when everyone on the team has the right balance of awareness for what others are working on day to day and what they care about, we can all start to act on behalf of one another without having to check. A pretty good example of this is, someone on the product team leaves an analytics requirement off a new feature, but engineering has a really good understanding how important analytics are for the marketing team to drive their customer comms. And someone just does the work even though there was no ticket or is left off the spec. That's really a good example of what we've tried to achieve. One way that we've done this, because it's pretty difficult, is actually building on this concept of a decision journal. It's been around for a while, but if you haven't heard of it, basically you have a decision-making template, and when someone wants to make a decision, you enter it into this template and you review that decision at a later date, so you can compare the actual versus the expected outcome. It's a pretty good method for improving the quality of decision-making over time because it removes biases from revisionist history. But we've built on that concept by making it a habit for everyone on the team. So anyone can log a decision when it makes sense, and we share our decisions in team meetings so that we can build over time horizontal awareness where marketing can start to appreciate the types of problems that engineering is focused on each week and how they think about solving those problems, and vice versa. Because of this, we can now run much more accurate simulations of, in our own heads, how different people are thinking and what they care about, and we can just support each other automatically. Something else that we've done, which is pretty creative, is, and it's taken a lot of work, but we've noticed that when you've got people remote on different time zones, to give an example, someone wakes up in the morning, there's a ticket that's ready to be tested from someone on the engineering team. It's not quite 100%. You add your feedback in a Slack post or a text-based comment on Jira, and then you go to sleep, and that person is supposed to wake up, perfectly understand the feedback, fix the problem, and you wake up, and it's fixed. And we know that never happens. And then you end up with these lead times that are in multi-day cycles or maybe even multi-week cycles. And that really sucked for us in the early days when we had to move fast. Video, on the other hand, is so easy to convey dense topics, but they're hard to create. A lot of tools out there make it difficult. It's a ton of clicks, or you build up all this data, and you don't really need the video after someone's consumed the feedback and acted on it. So we actually built a tool for ourselves that allows us to create video messages in one click, and they delete themselves after a few days. So now, our Slack channels, our Jira tickets, our Trello cards, they're filled with rich expression where dense, detailed issues could be communicated really quickly, really easily, and you know that there won't be any misinterpretation on the other end. Everyone feels way more connected, even across time zones, because technically we're still talking to each other. It's just with a massive time delay. It's like walkie-talkie. The final principle is eyes on, hands off. And this really comes from the fact that if you want everyone to see everything, it doesn't necessarily mean that you should introduce yourself into the decision-making process just because you can see it. And we want to empower people to make decisions first and ask questions later. When the first two principles, tools that talk and shared consciousness, are met, the risk of this approach drops dramatically because people are less likely to make bad decisions anyway. And if they do, we're going to review it as a team and correct over time. On a net basis, this approach is much cheaper for the business because a manager doesn't have to insert themselves into the decision-making process every time and slow down our ability to respond to customers. Getting comfortable with this, though, as a manager is definitely the hardest part, but if everyone knows what matters and they're aligned at a team level, it's harder to go off the rails than you think. So some of the benefits that we've experienced and that a lot of our customers experience too. The first one is really finding answers in unexpected places, is how we think about it. So we have a pretty decent percentage now of solutions or ideas being shaped by people in the wrong team. And we really find that tapping into the collective intelligence of people in the company who may not necessarily be in that role that's going to be responsible for executing on that solution can actually enrich the quality of products that we build for our customers. Reduced oversight definitely unlocks a lot of efficiencies for management, and we can do a lot more with less people, which is really important for a small company, but even if you're a small team within a large company, that's important too. And finally, we recently got to the point where we can implement a 10% rule on meetings. And this has taken a while, but we're really happy that we got there. So for individual contributors, they now can't have more than 10% of their time each week in scheduled meetings. Because everyone's so aligned, we don't have that kind of wastage, and so people can spend more than 90% of their time on the work that's been assigned to them, which is obviously much better for the business, but makes everyone much happier as well. I've taken you through this, but I wanted to outline it in this sort of timeline view, because we definitely didn't think of this overnight. We figured everything out over time. And as we were, coming across our own challenges in the business, we were also being inspired by a lot of content out there, one of which is Atlassian's open principles. And we figured out how to fix ourselves in order to fix the way we operated internally in order to fix the problems that we were experiencing externally. So today you've heard a little bit more about open from outside Atlassian. Hopefully it's been insightful. The metaphor of the octopus, I think, is really powerful, and hopefully you do too. It provides a really awesome way to visualize the future of work, which is what we're all here for. Because when you look at what's out there, there's really a lot of information on two ends of the spectrum. One is, that old school strict hierarchy approach, which a lot of us think we don't need today, and based on what I've gone through, hopefully you agree. But then on the other end, there's this absolutist flat hierarchy approach, which we don't think works either. That metaphor gives that middle ground of pushing autonomy and self-decision making down to teams in your organization to move faster, but still not forgetting whose role it is to make sure that everyone can stay aligned and move in the same direction. I wanted to end with that timeline to show you that open it's not easy. It does require constant tweaking over time, and we'll keep tweaking ourselves internally. But if you remember those three principles, tools that talk, shared consciousness, and eyes on, hands off, you can keep riffing internally on your own solutions to help your team or your company become open in new ways that we haven't even thought of, and maybe you can share them with us at Summit next year. If you want some more info, just come find me on the side, or you can visit our website. It's hugo.team.